back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. This past week we finally got the power connected to the shed. It has been quite a drawn out process. It was back in April that we had the electrician come originally and trench out from the power pole and run the cables to the shed. But then we had to wait for the power company to approve and upgrade the power at our pole, get them to come out and do that, and then wait for the electrician to be able to book them to come out again to have the meter moved and do that final process of getting it set up. So on the weekend, just before the electrician was due, we pumped water out of the trench. I've been talking about how wet it's been the last little while, so the trench had completely filled with water. We pumped that out so it was dry a little bit and gave the electrician a chance to just start work straight away. And they spent the day getting the house meter moved down to a new meter box near our power pole, and then connecting everything up and getting it ready to go. On that day it was freezing and obviously the power was off. And when our power is off, it means no hot water or any ability to do any cooking or anything like that at all. We don't have gas and we're not on mains water. So I snuggled inside and just put a blanket over me and knit and spun for the morning and waited until they were done. We don't have lighting or internal power points yet. We got a couple of points added at the switchboard, so we do have power, but we're now getting quotes to completely do the inside of the shed with lighting, get an outdoor power point for the water pump, and get everything set up. Hopefully that doesn't take as long as it did to get the initial power done. It might sound kind of silly, but the first thing that I did in terms of power usage over at the shed was to plug the vacuum cleaner in and vacuum my floor. Yeah, it's a concrete floor and it's in a shed, but going back to the start of this year, which feels like an extremely long time ago, you might remember that there was those big red dust storms. Now, they happened when the slab had been laid, but there was no roof on the shed. So we had all of this red dust fall onto our slab. And then also since then, we've obviously been traipsing in and out, bringing furniture and all of that kind of stuff in. And also I've been cleaning and sanding that old furniture, so there's been lots of dust particles. And I've been able to sweep quite a bit of it up, but I thought it was best to try and really get the dust up because I want to use this space as a crafting and workshop space, so I want it to be as clean as I can make it, and also starting from a reasonably clean slate before I get into doing anything more. The other reason that I wanted to vacuum the floor was because a little while ago I bought some secondhand carpet squares that I want to lay, especially in my sort of crafting area to make it a little cozier. And I wanted the floor underneath to be reasonably clean before I started to lay them so that there was no grit, because they're a rubber base. I wanted to make sure that they were going to stick and lay really nice and flat. So yes, I vacuumed and it is now pretty clean, and I have started to lay the tiles. And that's hard work. I definitely wouldn't want to be a carpet layer. I have cut them in around the doors and the pylons. I still have a couple more tiles that I need to cut, but I have started from the corner near the sliding doors and I've worked my way back into the space, and it's looking pretty good. They're recycled tiles. Some of them are quite dirty, so I'm discarding some straight off. So I'm sort of having to compare and make sure that I'm using similarly coloured ones so that they don't look too out of place, and then strategically hide some of the more dirty ones underneath furniture. So my plan is to kind of carpet 2/3 of the width, which will be the crafting space where I've got my table and the cabinets and the couches that overlook all of the bush outside through the sliding doors, and then underneath my desk as well. So just one area over there, and then leave the space where my sink and dyeing benches are as concrete, so that it can be a wet area and it doesn't matter if I spill dye powder, and it can be the real work area, and the rest can be the warmer, cozier sitting and crafting and working spaces. The only really progress I made on any crafting this week was on the 2 at a time socks that I showed you last week, and they are almost done. I'm at the very end of the cuff now. Here they are. You can see I've got the heels in, and I'm just doing the cuff. And what I'm doing is making, for a sort of a reasonable length cuff, I knit until when you fold them over, it comes to the start of the toe. So I've got a few more rows, and then these will be off the needles, and I'll start the second pair of commission socks that I am knitting. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about how I knit my 2 at a time socks. I use Addy circular needles. They're a 2.5mm needle, and they're an 80 centimeter length from tip to tip. I have 2 of them, so sometimes I will do 2 circular needles, and I might do that for this next pair of socks because I'm going to make them slightly bigger, so there will be more stitches on the needles. But for this pair I'm using magic loop, and that seems to work pretty well. I cast on 12 stitches, and I increased every other round until I got to 30 stitches per needle, so there's 60 total. Then I knit up the length until I got to, I asked the person who I was knitting them for a measurement to their ankle bone, and that's where I started inserting the heel in a different colour, and then just continued up until I was ready to put the cuff in. With the contrasting colour for the toes, heels and cuff, I'm working from both ends of the ball because it really doesn't matter. It's a fairly solid colour, so rather than wind it up and do anything special, I'm just using both ends. But for the main body of the sock, I take a little bit more time. What I do is I wind the skein into a ball, then I pop it on the scales and I wind half off so that I have 2 equal size balls. That way you'll have the colour sequences going in the same direction, and you can untangle your balls a bit better. You can sit one on either side of you, and then you can just make sure that you twist it back and forth the right way so you don't end up in a big jumbled mess. As with all of my other socks, I have used the Fish Lips Kiss heel, working 2 at a time. That is an easy heel to put in because you work all of the heel in one go. There's no rounds in the middle where you continue working on the front of the foot. You do all of the heel first before continuing, so you just can work on one heel, move across to the next sock, work on the next heel, and then just keep going in your rounds. I am glad that I worked these 2 at a time. As I said last week, it means I didn't have to count any rows to make sure that they were the exact same length. And it also means that when I've got one done, they're both done, and the needles will be clear to start on the next pair. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.